I'm just going to jump straight in. Give me 1 second. Hit that like, everybody. It's always something. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Sorry I'm running late. The internet was out this morning and had to do a lot of running upstairs into the crawl space and resetting the modem. But, without further ado, let me bring on our first guest who's been waiting patiently for me to get my act together. Ladies and gentlemen, the Major, thank you so much for being here. TurnLeftPack.org right out of the gate. And we were discussing, I wanted to save it for the air, because we were talking about how all these, I think somebody was calling them comfort flunkies yesterday on the live stream, and I was like, that's perfect. That Trump's comfort flunkies were all showing up and talking about how he was being attacked, and poor Donald Trump because he's being attacked. And you were saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, anybody else in this country, first and foremost, you show me a black man that gets caught breaking the law, that gets breaks like this, that doesn't happen. In contempt of court is usually carries around a 30-day sentence.
Right.
Donald Trump got him with 10 counts, and he got fined $10,000 when anybody else would have been sent to jail for 300 days. So he's not being attacked. Donald Trump is given every pass that we have ever had.
Right.
Ever. And that's what's going on in this country.
Oh, and sorry, there's an echo, guys. I will fix that just 1 second. That will be, let's see, how do I manage that?
Also, Hal, I just want to ask you also, did you see that Marge the Train Ring posted recently?
I did not.
She posted a tweet basically saying that Joe Biden and the FBI have basically greenlit Donald Trump.
Greenlit him?
Literally allowed to assassinate. I mean, literally, the stuff that she is spewing is as dangerous as we have ever heard. She needs to be dealt with.
Right.
She needs to be dealt with.
I think I got to say, I'm of two minds about this stuff often when we discuss these things. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to try and, monitor. Okay, we're good. I think the echo should be gone. Folks at home should have fixed it. Okay, good. So on the one hand, I completely agree. I think it's dangerous what you're saying. She's a member of Congress. This kind of stuff shouldn't be, is dangerous from an average citizen, much less an elected representative. At the same time, it does point to me a certain level of desperation on their part. Because again, I got to tell you, man, looking at Donald Trump and his three blathers yesterday when his defense only called 2 witnesses and 1 technical witness, which is really not a witness. They didn't say anything. They went, is this a text message from this account? Yes, it is. Done. That's it. Right. But there were only 2 actual speaking witnesses and a little bit of rebuttal, and they rested, which meant, either Trump told them, don't get into it. Don't share anymore. They're going to find out more shit. So don't open a can of worms if it's not already there. Just hope, we'll beat it in the appellate court. That's my game. What I'm trying to do is wreck a potential jury if we have a mistrial in the future by what I'm blathering every day. And then we'll just save it for the appellate court and try to get it dismissed at that point. That seems to be his plan. But because he's not talking about somebody who thinks he's going to win, and neither was she. And she's been flipping the fuck out lately. Like that thing with her and Jasmine Crockett was one thing, but I think it was partly her not being invited to the comfort flunky gathering.
Oh yeah, she's butthurt.
Right, yeah, and I honest to God, I feel like that's the root of it. Is that she got kicked out of the Freedom Caucus for shit-talking Boebert on the floor. It's okay if you call her a little bitch or something in the cloakroom or in the hallway, but she did it on the floor, and that was the thing of all fucking things, to get her kicked out of the Freedom Caucus, right? And now She sided with McCarthy. She put the motion on the floor against Mike Johnson and got booed by everybody. And I just don't. I feel like she's kind of like politically homeless right now and is flipping out. It's like aimless psychopathy at this point, I guess.
Yeah, the downside of it is that when she did that post saying that basically Joe Biden and the FBI were
Right.
going to assassinate Donald Trump,
Right.
Donald Trump actually responded to that. I mean, and that right there brings in the rest of the Trump balloons. It's
Right.
amazing that our country has fallen so low, and it's because this is what happens when you elect a morally bankrupt person
Right.
to the highest seat in the land. He's not running because he's not running because he wants to be the president and elevate people out of poverty. He's running because he knows that if he doesn't win, then he's going to finally he's finally going to feel the accountability that he's avoided his entire life.
Yeah. Well, and again, a lot of people, I think everybody knows this. And when he says this is the most important election in our country's history, he, like when he talks about anything, is talking about himself. He's talking about his own life and his own experience. Like America lives and dies with like anything that's outside of his visual circle doesn't exist. It's like he rezzes out like a video game. I've increasingly like Republicans and even I see this a lot. This might be a digital thing. I'm curious your take on this as well. That we have a big slather, especially of Republicans. There's some, obviously, would be the far left crowd on our end or something that are kind of in idea capture. They're stuck speaking jargon all the time, right? It's just terrible. Like they only speak their own internal weird cult language. And they view their phone or their YouTube feed or their TikTok feed or their Twitter feed as an actual window to the world, an objective glass pane that if you just open it shows you what the world is like. Period. It's not a fitted aggregate of news and stuff that is tempered to their own emotional collapse. It's the real world. And it's increasingly apparent in the way they talk about it. Like they talk about this kind of disjointed world that like it sounds like your grandparents that sit in front of Fox News all fucking day and don't see anything else. And so they just think they think everything's on fire.
And that's the problem. And once again, this is something that we allow. And it's something that shouldn't actually exist. Once again, to me, I think there's a lot of reason why we need to bring back the fairness doctrine. Because by doing away with that, Ronald Reagan basically created, what we have today. And
right.
We have a significant amount of people. I mean, Fox News was sued for $787 million, and there's a systematic lawsuit that's coming too. I just wish it would hurry up and hit because. At the end of the day, if you have an organization that gets sued that much for lying, wouldn't that be enough to tell you maybe you need to stop watching that? But that's all these people do. I mean, even after it's found that Fox News lied, they're still standing in front of that daggone, water fountain with the water, hitting them right in the face. It's like we cannot stop these people for listening to that bullshit because they just like it. It's like the Inquirer magazine. I mean, who on the earth buys that bullshit? But it's always right there next to the daggone checkout, and people obviously are liking it. It's bullshit, but we allow it to continue, even though it's hurting our country. I mean, look, you want to play BS, play BS. But when it starts to affect our country, when we find ourselves literally where we're almost ready to lose it all. I don't know if you know this or not, Hal, but did you know that the Donald Trump Bible is missing a big chunk of amendments? When it's got the Declaration of Independence, it's got the Pledge of Allegiance. It's missing the 11th through the 27th amendments. And those amendments are the amendments that gave women the right to vote, that ended slavery, that gives a president only 2 terms. Wow! How amazingly how this was just left out of this Trump Bible. With that, to me, you want to talk conspiracy theories. I don't like conspiracy theories because once again, most of them are just bull crap. But when you realize and you start to think, okay, now they're doing away with Roe v. Wade. Now they're making the medicine that is used for abortions. They're putting them on Schedule 1 is what they're trying to do and make them illegal. What's going on here? What is behind the scenes? Are we basically? Is there something that's going to say we have to have so many babies, blah blah blah, a year, or we're not going to continue going on this trajectory? I don't know, but there's something going on right now where we are literally attacking women, we are attacking people of color, and you've got Donald Trump here with his his friggin' Third Reich friggin' speech. Something is definitely up, and people need to be paying some friggin' attention and waking their asses up.
I agree. I will say that there is, again, an increasing sign that the more kind of extreme they get, the more they drive away independence, the more they are losing what is effectively that Haley voter crowd. I'm of two minds of this because on the one hand, it's a terrible play. There's no way they get a plurality of voters and get this fucking Project 2025 thing that they're going to do, and where they get that done if they start putting up unified Reich, videos and that kind of shit, or chasing the Marjorie Taylor Greene favorability ratings. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible idea. And the idea that somehow that, they're going to outrun Biden because of inflation or gas prices like it's 1979 again is just horseshit. It's not going to work. It isn't. So the thing is, are they simply setting up another Jan 6 where they know they're going to lose, but they can drive a certain selection of the public, like the fucking crazies, to the point of violence by promising them a Third Reich future? You know what I mean? Or a Fourth Reich, I guess, at this point, right? Because I know this is not a winning strategy. I know it. The failure of Roe, you can tell how he's fucking talking about the Roe v. Wade issue, the abortion issue. He's he's so trying to lay it off on other people. Everybody wanted this. Everybody wanted it back to states. That means he knows it's going to be a failing issue in the election. He's fucked. He knows it. And he wants to, when it happens, he's going to blame everybody. You motherfuckers and your stupid Roe v. Wade shit ruined it for everybody. You guys told me this would work and it didn't. It ain't my fault. It's, it's all these assholes I had around me. Hashtag the best people. So I think he's prepping for a loss.
To me, that's what I feel. I feel that every single day, more and more people in this country are waking up. And like you said, I recently saw yesterday where I forget, it was either on one of these MSNBC channels. They were showing the polling, and polling when it comes to young women. It's blowing him out of the water.
Right.
He's getting friggin' destroyed by young women in this country. And to me, I don't think that there's going to be a turnaround here. I'm just hoping that closing statements start tomorrow. Yeah. And they said that it'll probably go into next week. But by next week, I'd say by Tuesday, I would say we may literally be watching Donald Trump be found guilty. I believe, I watch a lot of Glenn Kirshner, Michael Popak, Ron Filipkowski, Harry Littman. I watch those guys, and they are literally saying that, the prosecution is putting in a master class. One of them said, well, Glenn Kirshner said that, Donald Trump's lawyers scored 2 points against Michael Cohen, but the prosecution got the other 98 points. And they're saying that watching the jury, they feel that the jury has literally, after all of the stuff that has come out, they literally said that you could pretty much look into their faces and tell that they were quite disgusted about the evidence that they had seen. So
Right.
I'm like 34 felony counts, each charged between 5 and 25 years. I mean, all he's got to be is found guilty on one of the 34, and he's done. And I think that they're going to find him guilty probably on all 34.
Well, there's an overlap in it. So if you find him guilty on one charge, you're finding him guilty on 3, because he basically, each check that he wrote, he lied 3 times. He falsified the ledger for it being a legal expense 3 times for every check. When it went out the door, when it transferred from this account to this account, and when it went to when the check was signed and sent out to him. When it went from the trust to the bank account, from the bank account to the business account, and from the business account to Michael Cohen. Each one of those is a lie. And here's the thing: at the second lie, and then the third part where he's signing it, that's a conspiracy. That's the point of all this, is that he engaged in this year and change long conspiracy to hide these payments, a month at a time.
Yeah.
And each time he did it, he engaged in a conspiracy. Every single month, he committed the same crime for a fucking year and 13 months. And so he lied so they engaged in this overall conspiracy to do it, and then he signed his fucking name to it 3 times. So that's if he's found guilty on 1, he'll be found guilty on 3 counts. If he's found guilty on 1, they're all the same crime repeated. So basically, you keep knocking off the same fucking house, and they prove the first time, right, okay, you didn't break a window, you didn't go in when people were there, but they found out you made a key and you snuck into the house. And then when you snuck into the house, between the time that you snuck into the house and when the people came back, some stuff went missing that they had track of, right? You prove that. So every other time that key was used, because let's say it's a digital key, it's one of those like Ring doorbell things. You use the code to get in because you hacked it. Every time that key is used, that means you committed 3 crimes: breaking and entering, larceny or grand larceny, or theft, whatever the local charge will be, and sale of stolen goods when you got rid of it. Right? Each one, they if it happened once, every time that code was entered, it happened 12 times. That's what this is. So I agree. I think he's going to go down for it. I really do. And do I think he's going to do time for this? No. He's a first offender in this particular case. It's a felony, but it's edging towards a white collar crime. Now granted, this is the same city that put Martha Stewart in jail. This is the same city that went enough already with Bernie Madoff. This is the city where fucking Jared Kushner's dad,
father,
fucked his uncle out of part of their inheritance or ownership or whatever. Like his uncle hired a hooker to get it, set themselves up, and he went to jail for that because New York has a long wind up, but when the financial crime shit gets over the top, that's when they shut it down. You could argue that even the mob shit they went after, they waited till it was too violent, right? They were all right, a certain amount of violence, but.
But what bothers me though is that if he doesn't see any jail time, I mean,
right.
This guy basically goes out there and he continues running for president in the hopes that he wins, and if he wins, then that's it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we are literally leaving our entire. We are putting our democracy in the hands of the poorly educated. And we just have to hope that enough of them have woke up, because there's a possibility that if they didn't, this guy is going to be elevated and our democracy is going to be null and void. I mean, everything is going to be different. Donald Trump is never going to give up. And that's when, you start to look at some of the things that are sinister that are coming out. The fact that he posted 3 videos and each one of them had Reich, like the Third Reich. I mean, that's a red flag.
Right.
These things that, I just saw today, they got photographs of Walter Nauta carrying big classified documents.
Right.
These are all things that anybody else in this country would be under the prison for. We're going to give these people that have literally stolen classified documents and we've got so much evidence about them basically hiding them, moving them, lying to the lawyers.
Right.
And this is stuff that literally is our nation's top secrets about nuclear capabilities, about all, I just sit and I think about how, when Donald Trump first became the president, he asked to get a list of all of the people that were working as agents for our country all over the world. And shortly after that, there was a huge uptick.
A bunch of them died.
A bunch of them being killed, a bunch of them being arrested. I mean, this stuff isn't coincidence, people.
No,
this
there
is
was
friggin', we've got a criminal in the friggin' White House.
Right. Well, yeah, we definitely had one, and he's not going to be again. I really do believe that. But I also, you're absolutely right. We cannot allow, not only does he have to go, but he's got, and again, I think the classified documents case is where he will see jail time, and it will take as long as it takes because they will slow walk anything that involves a president. And to some degree, I'm okay with that because he will sweat it the entire fucking time. And even if he doesn't do any jail time, his ego, like his whole I got indicted that he talks about, you can tell he is wigging the fuck out. And even if he doesn't do time in this particular case, he's gonna, when he's convicted, he's like, shit, if I was convicted on that one, and I've lost this civil case, and I lost the E. Jean Carroll case, and I lost it on appeal, and then I fucked up again. He knows the serious cases that classified documents case. And I have thought for the longest time that his biggest fear is not the shit we know, but the shit we'll find out. It's not the boxes that were at Mar-a-Lago. It's the boxes that left.
I believe that's going to happen. But here's another thing, too, that I think people need to realize. Okay, Donald Trump does not have the ability to find good legal counsel. Okay, because look at it like this. Elena Haba is still by his side.
Right.
Anybody that had the ability to get better lawyers would have dumped her after the $5 million case that she failed to check jury trial and instead checked bench trial.
Totally.
Then she went, represented him, and he lost $83.3 more million to E. Jean Carroll, and she's still standing by his side. That right there tells you that Donald Trump has what he has. And oh, by the way, once again, if you listen to Harry Littman, Michael Popoff, Glenn Kirshner, they're in those courtrooms. They're coming out and they're telling us what a bunch of just wannabe lawyers these people are. They're not even good lawyers, but that's all he's got. And I'm like, as we go further down this line, as Donald Trump gets found guilty again and again and again, there's going to be far less. I mean, this guy's literally going to have a public defender representing him in the classified documents.
I'm surprised he doesn't already, except if he did it, that like this idea that like Biden's DOJ is after me. Well, like then you can't use somebody that doesn't, that the city provides, stupid. But he would totally do it. He's like, I got, he thinks he's broke, and he is, but he thinks, he's cash poor and he can't afford all this shit. I mean, he can't afford to lose, and he's going to. I agree, though. I'm half the time, like even with Blanche obviously was in over his head a couple of times, very distinctly. And he had, those 2 points that he allegedly got on Michael Cohen, especially the part where he was like, they got out that he had basically taken a bonus he was supposed to get, right? But he didn't get permission to do it. And it was like Weisselberg wrote him he didn't walk out with bags of cash. Somebody wrote him the fucking check, right? So that's Weisselberg's problem. That's, if he was part of the embezzling on that, he didn't have access to Trump's personal fucking bank account. But the whole thing is like, he stole $60,000. He's a thief. The only crime we've seen is he's a thief. He admitted to being a thief. Fine. Prosecute that motherfucker. Bring him in. Show your books. Please allow Michael Cohen to present a defense about where that money came from and how he presumed it was his and why he hadn't received a bill, and show me how your fucking business works. Open it up. Allow discovery into the inside workings of the Trump organization's accounting. Please fucking do it.
It's funny that Michael Cohen literally told him, I took money. I took money from Donald Trump. I took money from Donald Trump because I knew was probably going to get stiffed in the end. I mean,
Yes.
Donald Trump has a history of
not paying people.
Track record of not paying people. Yeah,
Right.
Amazing.
I know. And the other thing is like, you know, like everybody who's listening to that in New York is like, shit, I should have thought of that. I should have brought that up. Like, I think there's probably a dozen contractors in New York who are like, oh shit, you mean if you were just hanging around the office, you could have just picked up a check off the desk and written it? Well, fuck, I'd have saved myself a hassle and you know, 8 worthless months in court with this dumbass. So yeah.
Did you see there's a video out of a young girl that literally talked about how Donald Trump literally, you know, did her father horrifically wrong. I believe he ended up committing suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally, like he lost everything. Donald Trump, you know, got him. Actually said, "Hey, I want you to put the bid in. You're going to get it. You're going to get it." But,
Yep.
but you know, you're going to have to take a big loan out. But you're going to, as long as you have the money, you're going to get the contract and you're going to make a fortune. And in the end, you know, Donald Trump did him horribly wrong. And the thing is Donald Trump doesn't care. Donald Trump doesn't care. This video is of a young girl that basically lost her father because Donald Trump and his corruption literally destroyed her father, took his business from him. You know, I mean, you know, it amazes me how so many people can still support Donald Trump when you hear these stories that are coming out about how he has screwed so many people over.
Working class people.
Working class people. You know, the fact that Donald Trump, and once again, all this stuff is documented. He could not stand coming into the lobby of the Trump Tower and seeing people of color working on anything. He thought it was below. He thought it was below him to allow people to think that black people actually did construction for him. You know, I mean, just
and accounting. If you'll recall, there's that famous story where he walked into an accounting office. I think it was Mazars, and they had black accountants there. And he said he didn't want them working on his accounts. He wants, quote, the people with the small hats, which means Jews, because not only does he believe that black people can't work with money or aren't smart enough, but he believes Jews have a special ability to do it. And so, yeah.
Now, look, I will tell you another thing too. I don't care if you're a person of color and you're running around here, Donald Trump. You got a problem. You are mentally deficient.
Well,
you know, for you to allow somebody like him to utilize the color of your skin to try to friggin' get, I mean, Donald Trump. Nobody has done more for the black people than Donald Trump. More than and when he goes into like more than Abraham Lincoln, maybe Abraham Lincoln, but probably more. Like he'll throw that in. It's so fucking. It's bizarre. Like let's just dial back and sit in the fact that it's one of the silliest fucking things any human being could say. Literally the president that presided over the Civil War and that ended slavery in this country. And Donald Trump thinks his opportunity zones and the criminal justice reform stuff, the First Step Act or whatever that Kim Kardashian put on his fucking desk are the equivalents. Like, it's just gross. Secondly, this man cannot even think of black people without thinking crime. Like, he literally, if he speaks about black people in this country in general, he doesn't even go to, we have an employment issue. We want to get the unemployment level for black people, more in line with the general populace, and we got to close that gap. He can't even hold on to that. Like, he can't just deal with something, a long-term problem that we're trying to remedy without going, criminal justice reform. And I think they can relate to the fact that I've been indicted because black people get indicted all the time and they get indicted. Like, it's just like he thinks every fucking black person is a criminal. It's just gross. It's just, and it's, Go ahead. I've been arrested.
Let
me message this guy real quick.
You got it. Yeah, he gets and then I mean, along with the fucking that and selling like the gold shoes and shit like that, like you could just see them game planning, like, how do we get more black people to vote for us? Like I'll talk the fact that I'm a thug and a criminal. We'll do shirts with my mugshot on it, and we'll sell sneakers. Like the fucking just like constant hum of racism in this motherfucker is astounding.
The mugshot and the shoes. And he did that specifically thinking this is going to make me real popular with the black community.
Right.
I mean,
that's how he picks it out. And
wow,
like the only and when he's bragging about the Hispanic vote or whatever, what he's talking about is Cubans in Florida and conservative Hispanics who've been in the country a long time who side with him and want to pull what I would call a Paul Ryan. Get in the lifeboat and pull the ladder up after yourself, because that's what Paul Ryan did. Paul Ryan his father passed away, sad for his family, but he got SSI because of his father's death. He got Social Security. And with that Social Security, he went to college. And that's how he became a congressman and then the speaker. That he took that road. Without public assistance, there is no Paul Ryan in Congress. There is no Paul Ryan Speaker of the House, okay? And he'll never look back and admit that, the same way Elon Musk won't admit that if there's no Obama administration, there's no Tesla. Period. End of story. If it wasn't for Obama during his saving of the big three, during the recession, adding electric car support in there specifically, we wouldn't even be talking about them. They'd be a bump and ruffle in the tech bubble. So there is a group of folks in every group of humans, because we are all, as human beings, capable of the entire spectrum of intellect and emotion. And he finds that particular group that is religiously conservative, anti-abortion, and don't want anybody from their old country coming into the country because it interferes with their ability to do business and they have to compete with them. And Debbie fucking D'Souza, who, Dinesh D'Souza, the Mess D'Souza's wife, who's from Venezuela, is a prime example of that. Way more racist than he is. It's a fucking incredible thing to say, but it's absolutely true. Like, if you're going to see a racism bomb on that talk show, that their podcast, she's going to be the one dropping it. And her whole thing is, now that I'm in, shut the fucking door. That's the Donald Trump voter in terms of immigrants. That's what he's looking for. The people who say, shut the door after I've gotten in the house. That's who he's going for. And there's a percentage of that. There's about maybe 16, 18% of the populace in any particular group that's like that. And that's he went from getting, from half of those folks not voting at all to all of them voting for the Republican, in this case, him. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I hope that people are waking up more and more every day, because once again, like I said, I feel that we are seeing people wake up every single day in the state.
I agree.
And I'll just be happy. I wish that these lawsuits wasn't, pushed, because that's what it's being pushed for Donald Trump. Eileen Cannon is absolute trash. I actually have quite a few people in my phone, like Eric Swalwell and them. And once again, this is one of the reasons why it's so important for people to go out there and vote Democrat, especially down ballot candidates. Let's get all these Democrats in. If we take back the House of Representatives and we keep the Senate and we keep the Oval Office, we're going to see a period of time where legislation is going to be pushed that's going to really benefit Americans greatly. And that's important. I love that Joe Biden has been the first person to finally remove cannabis from Schedule I narcotic. I talked to Eric Swalwell not too long ago, and I was talking about, we're never going to see term limits put on Congress, because the people in Congress are the ones who vote for that. So that's a moot point, and it goes nowhere. Right. But we absolutely can put term limits on Supreme Court justices if we take back the House, and that's exactly what needs to happen. They need to get a 12-year cutoff. That's it. And everybody that's already hit their 12th year, it's time for you to go ahead and move on. Because once again, we've got our Supreme Court has been corrupted, and that is absolutely a proven fact. And once again, I got my oath on the wall when I become a senator in West Virginia, And let me tell you something. That oath right there is pretty much mirroring every oath that you take when you take any position of especially being a legislator. And I'm going to tell you right now, the same thing with the Supreme Court justices. You are not to be taking gifts. You know, what they've been doing for decades with Harlan Crow should absolutely have them removed from office. You know, there's a lot of things.
I think that here's my belief system is on the Supreme Court, and I think it's a crucial conversation to have, because we talked about, some people brought up expanding it. I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't think it's necessary. But I also think that I'm not necessarily for term limits on them, but the rules on what you can do as a SCOTUS should be so fucking tight that you have to make a moral and legacy decision about your life when you take that job. That, one of my favorite Marvel characters, and Phil Bittner will be joining us in a minute, but I want to thank the Major. I want everybody to go to turnleftpack.org, donate and get yourself some Jackaloon merch, and wear it to the Sexy Liberal shows and wave at us. Yeah, but there was one of my favorite characters, relatively short-lived character, but he was, some people might be familiar, Rom the Space Knight. And Rom the Space Knight, they were just when computers were getting in people's houses, so they created a character named Rom. And Rom was, the story of these guys, the Space Knights, on this particular planet, is that this outside force attacked the planet and was killing everybody, and they wiped out this guy's family. And to become one of the Space Knights, you get inside this armor they put on you, and you never get out. So the decision to do it was, you will never make physical contact with another human being again. You will never have these things, but you will be able to fight honorably for your people and save the planet and fight villainy in the universe, that kind of idea. But that choice is fucked up. Like, you have to be committed to make this choice, right? And the Mandalorian, they have him taking his oath. That was an idea. They literally seal these guys inside the suit forever. And there's an element to that I'm not suggesting we need Judge Dredds that are welded into their suits for just yet. But I will say that the Supreme Court justices there should be such limitations on your financial future that you make a solid decision. I will have legacy, and I might get accolades and respect, and my name may be hallowed in the legal documents that are in our nation's law schools and whatever for all in time. But I am not going to get rich doing it. This is the opposite of that. I am giving up a future. It is like joining the priesthood. It should be on the equivalent of joining the priesthood in that regard. You are giving up certain creature comforts in this world to do this, because morally and objectively you believe in what you're doing and in the Constitution and all these kind of things. So that the decision is difficult. Instead of right now, you ask people if they want to be a fucking Supreme Court justice, they're all like, fuck yes, absolutely. Yeah. Lifetime appointment, what the fuck? And then these dickheads can give you fucking yacht trips and shit like that. Yeah, whatever. We make our own rules. Why not? The rules should be so tight that you got to sit with your family and everybody and go, okay, if this happens, you guys got to be okay with the limitations I'm going to experience in my life from this point forward. But it's, this is a choice. Yeah. And right now it isn't.
It should be a serious conversation that you have with your family, because as you move up, your circle gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
That's right.
And once again, you're going to get paid a good salary, a really good salary when you're in the Supreme Court. But once again, that's also part of the sacrifice. Is you're saying, I'm willing to stay at this level because of what I'm going to be able to do and help and like for the good cause. That's what it's about.
Right. Yeah, it's the same thing. By the way, it's what we ask of every goddamn soldier that signs up for service, because you could die in those boots.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
You give up the potential for the rest of your fucking life. You go onto the battlefield and you are giving your life for the fucking Constitution. And the difference is you might survive it and then have a life afterwards. A Supreme Court justice will never find themselves in physical danger like that, where their service to the country can be cut short that quickly simply by a landmine or a sniper's bullet. But they should take it as seriously and with the same depth of reason.
Yep, absolutely, brother.
That'll be my litmus test when I'm checking these folks. Love you, brother. Thank you for being on. Philip's waiting in the wings, so I'll bring him in a moment. But I want to remind everybody, and we were cut short because of internet issues, and we'll next time we have Major on, we'll get into some deeper stuff. Maybe next week when you can pop on, and we'll get the verdict while you're on. That would be
brother. I'm down with that. Hey, I'm down with that. I'm down with that.
Hey, watch party. If it looks like they're coming out, we'll jump in. I'll contact you and we'll go. Okay, hop on. We're gonna have a watch party. It's gonna happen. Anyways, appreciate it, brother. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Cheers. There he goes. And joining us right now, Philip Ittner. How are you, sir? Welcome to the show.
Good.
Yeah. And lots going on, to say the very least. We'll talk a little bit today about Zelensky's conversation to NATO and everybody, and telling everybody to get back on board. He's gotten his mojo back in terms of calling for support from European countries and the like. I think once the U.S. funding and the support, got codified, he's a little, feels a little stronger about that. The Channel 1, I guess, 60 Minutes crowd is calling for nuking Finland now or some shit. Like we're back to them calling that crap out. I think the biggest thing, quite frankly, is the number of armored personnel carriers and airplanes that are falling out of the sky, which says to me the munitions are arriving.
Yeah, that, and they're probably running out. Well, they have been running out for quite some time. The ability to repair and maintain their equipment. I mean, we see this on the military side, and we see it on the civilian side. Zelensky. Zelensky making some of those public statements, I think, is for public consumption, whether or not foreign or domestic. He knows perfectly well what's going on behind the scenes. And he knows the one point of contention that I do think is genuine. Although, I mean, look, a lot of these things and these points of contention are 100% legitimate. But the one that is making the big stink here is the inability to fire U.S. provided munitions into Russia, even if they see Russian forces assembling, or if they come under fire from Russian artillery on the other side of the border. The general opinion, or the general perception, is that they're unable to return fire, and I'm not convinced that's true either. By the way, there's a lot of stuff that's very weird going on about that whole can we fire into. I mean, the Brits straight up came out and said you can use our cruise missiles to fire into Russia.
Right.
We have been very ambiguous, and that's not helpful in our position. Because when Blinken was here, he said once we give the weapons to the Ukrainians, they can prosecute the war the way they see fit. And then we saw that walked back by the Pentagon. So this is so typical of what happens in war zones when we get involved. Not just war zones, but whenever the Pentagon and the State Department are working together, they oftentimes don't communicate very well.
Sure.
So they
I would argue they are at odds specifically. Yeah. I mean, because like Marianne Williamson will sometimes talk about how we need a Department of Peace. That shit, when she's talking about a Department of Peace, which is adorable but sort of silly, as a name. That's what the State Department is. Marianne Williamson.
Who says that? Well.
Yeah. But the point is, and like I like the idea, but it sounds like what you call your like coffee clatch. And again, we all want peace, but that's what the State Department is. That's what they are.
And
they're the ones who go so we don't get in a fight.
Putin and Russians need a Ministry of Peace as well. It's not
right. Yeah, it's not us. Right. Yeah.
Off. Mm-hmm. But you're right. I mean, I wouldn't say the State Department is the same thing as a Department of Peace, because they do what they do is they exert American soft power, diplomatic power.
Right.
That's their role. That every country has an organization like this,
which is what you do before the guns start firing. Therefore, it is, and the whole point of it is to keep the guns from firing. That's what they're for. Therefore, I would argue that the Department of State is the Department of Peace. It is the Ministry of Peace. That's what it does.
Yes. The closest thing that we
anybody will ever have. Right.
Yeah. Exactly, and also the very concept from its base roots is just ridiculous. Sounds good. It's a lovely idea, but what would the Ministry of Peace or the Department of Peace, seeing as we don't have ministries, what would they do? How would they?
Well, they would immediately get about the business of handing. They would immediately get about the business of giving Crimea to the Russians, so that everybody can just go back to having coffee. Right.
We just need peace. Yeah, we just need peace. Give them whatever they want. Oh, they're big thugs, and we're scared of them.
Right.
That would be the Department of Peace.
That's what
I'm getting so damn sick and tired of simplistic thinking when it comes to very, very complex, nuanced, difficult issues. I mean, I am seeing the internet being flooded with all these stories that we are. Look, I'm not going to lie. The new mobilization law that was passed by the RADA. It was a very difficult thing to do, but democracies are difficult.
Yep.
It went back and forth from the president's office to the legislative body here, the RADA, similar to our Congress.
Yep.
Back and forth, because that's, again, what a democracy does.
Yep.
But, there are instances out there of people being grabbed off the streets. Their papers are checked. If they are not found to be in proper registration for the draft for conscription, they are hauled in. And it's unpleasant, and it's nasty, and it's not. The
we had one too.
That you see, we had a draft too. But I mean, like the thing is, yes, those instances are happening. They are not. I mean, the way that people who are saying that we're not, Zelensky is now creating this dictatorship, and look, they're press ganging people off the street. They would have you believe that the videos that you're seeing are like happening on every street corner. It's all over the place. It's this It's this massive, these like old Victorian, you take the shilling because it's at the bottom of your pint glass that somebody gave you in a pub. It's not fucking like that here.
You're being Shanghai, right?
Yeah, you're not. It's not widespread. Now, are people staying indoors? Are men of fighting age who are now applicable for conscription or the draft? Yes. There's a lot of them don't want to go to the front because they've heard the horror stories from the front of not having ammunition, of not having the proper weaponry to fight. It doesn't change the fact that Ukrainians are very much anti-Moscow, and they don't want to live under Moscow's boot, but they want to live. And also some of these people aren't political at all. They're just citizens. But then that also brings me to the question of, why should they benefit from a free and sovereign Ukraine? When there are guys who have been on the front lines for 18 months, 20 months. Those guys need to come off the line. And why? Because you have a nice, comfy life in Kiev. Does that poor that poor guy have to sit on the front lines for 20 months at a straight go? I mean, it's a lot of this is also about burden sharing. So
Right.
I'm not I am not going to stick my head in the sand when it comes to the fact that there are people who are afraid to go out because there are these groups that, there are police officers walking the streets now, and they are checking documentation. You have to have, and it sucks. It sucks,
Right,
but it's a
right.
reality of war, and it doesn't. And then the other thing I've seen happening is because on the what it was at the 21st yesterday, officially Zelensky's term in office came to an end. And everybody now who is, of course, anti-Ukraine and pro-Russia, and all of this is all done within that framework. They don't really genuinely care about Ukraine or the democracy or whatever it is they scream bloody murder about. What they're really doing is they're entrenched in a position of pro-Moscow, anti-Ukraine, and because Biden is supporting Ukraine, they're doing their domestic partisan politics with stuff that's happening here, and it's disgraceful and it's shameful and it shouldn't be happening, but they do. This argument that he has extended his presidency and turned it into a dictatorship. One, I point to what the UK did in the Second World War. They also suspended elections. We may not have done, but we were not on the front lines. We had the oceans between us, so we could afford to have elections. The people in Ukraine can't have elections here because a significant population or a significant percentage of the population is currently under occupation. So do you deny them their vote? They are still Ukrainian citizens, although increasingly they're being forced to take Russian passports.
I also have to say, like, we had a draft in this country for the Vietnam War, and the Vietnam War was not on our border. The Vietnam War was halfway across the world. The idea that you wouldn't have a draft on your doorstep to make sure you have enough people to fight a war that you can't move away from. You can't just pack up and leave. We could have gotten out of Vietnam and Cambodia and southern China and all that surrounding area and the islands around there at some point earlier than we had to. We absolutely could have. The Ukrainians do not have that option. The Russians are right there. They're not going, they're not going anywhere unless you drive them out.
I've heard a lot of Ukrainian soldiers who have been on the front lines are 100% behind this, like grabbing these kids off the, and checking their documents if they're in, because they've been at the front line for a long, long time because a lot of people are not signing up to join the bill. A lot are. It's just, again, it is simplistic thinking about very complex issues. This country is not a dictatorship. This country is under martial law, so that the postponement of elections is 100% legal.
Yep.
It's just people who want they want their worldview reinforced, and I've been told that Ukraine is this, so I'm going to believe this.
Right.
Or I've been told that Russia is this, so I'm going to believe this. And it's very frustrating to watch.
Sure.
And again, part of this lies with our press corps. It's been, again, doing a really crappy job explaining this war. Part of it is down to the fact that wars are messy and it's not always pleasant or nice, and it's not always straightforward, and there isn't a clear through line. But it's to just jump on this bandwagon of Ukraine is turning into a dictatorship. When Russia is a dictatorship,
right?
Russia
Well, that's why. That's
state.
That's where that story point comes from. Because looking back, over the Trump years, and they are increasingly getting in our rearview mirror, and I'm very excited about that fact. And Trump knows it, and everybody around him knows it, and they're trying to be basically all the people you see clamoring outside of his courtroom. And by the way, Stay Gold, I hear you about the microphone. I will do what I can to remedy it. It is just part and parcel to the shift over.
Your mic or
I
my
have
mic?
plans. Mine, not yours. Yours fine.
Okay.
The issue, that when you look back at everything that Trump says is projection, and we talk about that, and a lot of what we're talking about in terms of his hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. So they knew that was going to be a problem for a very long time. And so what happens about, I don't know, maybe a year into, before he starts running a little bit, you start hearing this kind of QAnon Pizzagate whisper thing that builds to a groundswell once he's the nominee. And the entire thing is just to get out ahead of this story point that he hangs out with a pedophile. He was Epstein's wingman for 2.5 decades, that he had no problem with this guy, that he said on Howard Stern that he walks in on these 15-year-olds in the Miss Teen USA thing while they're changing, underage girls. And he has no problem with this. He says this weird shit about fucking his own daughter and how, sex and kind of sexually objectifying his wife's baby before they're even born, about what kind of tits they're going to have, that kind of shit. Okay. So to get ahead of that, here comes Pizzagate. Right? So that's, they use that to take the bite out of his reality. They project this whole cabal storyline. Well, the same thing is happening with the fact that right now, Russia is a dictatorship, as you say. And so what do? You start, about a year before this shit's happening, talking about how there are no real freedoms in Europe and the United States, and there's no real freedoms in Ukraine, and they're under the thumb of Europe. So even Ukrainians just have an illusion of freedom. They're really, dictated to by fucking Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum or some dipshittery, right? And they start selling that line ahead of time to muddy the waters going into this, because they know they are going to be dictatorial and aggressive. And so they're going to paint this picture that everybody's dictatorial, everybody's aggressive, and it's just a matter of time. And so we have to react to them. We were telling you for 2 years, these people are dictatorial and aggressive. So we had to attack them and be dictatorial and aggressive before they attacked us. That's how they work. So every storyline that I hear about Ukraine right now, months, Russia's going to try some shit. That's it. They're planning something to use that as cover. And by the way, this is the current number of dead and wounded off the battlefield for Russia. Amputees, people blown to pieces, people doing themselves in at the front line and all that. 496,370, 1,300 as of last night. We're going to, Phil, by the time we talk on Saturday, my friend.
Yeah, we'll have gone over 500,000.
It'll be 500,000.
That's either dead or so grievously injured that they're not going to be coming back, and their lives are, affected. Yeah, for the entirety of the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. Yep, that's what Putin did to them in the space of 2.5 years, give or take. He's incurred more casualties than the NATO countries have endured since 1945.
It's
1945.
Think about Afghanistan. The Russians.
Yeah,
lost,
even in Afghanistan, they didn't lose like this.
Yeah, and they were there for a decade. And they even still they lost more than everybody else in a similar amount of time. It's just habitual.
In the end, it was a large contributor, if not a primary contributor, to the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Yep.
So one wonders, now they had to leave Afghanistan in shame. So that contributed, why did we spend so many lives? And then, we saw the collapse of the Soviet Union. Not that I'm drawing a direct line from those things, but it's a contributor.
I'm sticking to my rope-a-dope
What's
theory.
going to happen when they lose this war? What's going to happen when they lose this war and they look at 500,000 casualties?
I think it's going to be a
Cheddar.
legit. I
Oh,
think it's going to be
hey.
It's going.
Thank you, Luke.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Air alert is over. May the
That's good
force
news.
be with you.
Yeah.
Force will be with you always.
Yeah,
It's no use, Luke.
about
If you'd have been there, you'd have been
about-
killed too.
Yeah, about 45 minutes ago, we had the air raid siren. So that's just Luke telling me I'm safe.
You're allowed to go to the market
nice.
and get something to eat.
I'm allowed to go
And
back
again,
to the market.
a good reminder, I think, to the seriousness of the situation. You know, you take it in stride, Phil, and we appreciate that. Your dedication and your kind of the normalcy that it has, but it's not normal, and it shouldn't be normal. And
No.
and the people of Ukraine should
But
not
what are you
be
gonna do?
under this constant threat. Right. Well, I'll tell you what you're going to do.
Of course not.
Support the Ukrainians
win the
and
damn
drive
war.
these motherfuckers out. Now,
Yep.
So real quick, there was a report, and I'll see if I can find it. It was on the Telegram channel.
Well, while you're looking, I'll just finish my
yeah.
thought before Luke
Yeah.
look at it. Look, I mean, you're right. We need to push these people out. You push the Russians out of this country, and then what will happen when the Russians look at the body count and the cost that was incurred for very little benefit? I mean,
Yeah.
he can try if he holds on to Crimea, which there's a chance he might. He might try and spin that into a great victory, but everybody's going to know that the cost was way too high, and they're not. You know, the people who are looking at the offensive in Kharkiv and saying, this is going to break the back of the Ukrainians, and then now it'll just accelerate. They have no idea what's happening here. They have no idea the will of the Ukrainian people and the fighting capacity that still exists. Nobody is panicking about Kharkiv. I can tell you that for sure. Nobody is panicking about Kharkiv in Ukraine. People have concerns because people are dying, but nobody is like, oh my God, run for the hills. It's everybody get to the trains and get to Poland as quick as you can. No,
right.
None of that's going on here.
For what you're seeing in the background is a train line that Russia built very quickly as a potential replacement to the Kerch Bridge. Now, it does not reach Crimea, and it is effectively at this point only delivering stuff sort of midway into the occupied territories. And a reminder, by the way, that 50, when they hit 500,000 people killed and maimed in this war, when the Russians hit it, they will have spent, I guess, 100,000. Yeah, they will have spent, 10,000 souls for every kilometer they took. Or every mile. Yeah. 10,000 for each mile of area that they arguably already had soft control over. So
their economy is going to be devastated for
ever.
God
I mean,
knows
they're in the same position as China is. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And what they're trying to do right now, it looks like increasingly that the leadership around Putin and elsewhere is looking for their bug out. So you're seeing a lot of, that's why the crypto rise lately. If you've seen lately you could track the faith in the war by the spike in crypto, because both, Russian and Chinese millionaires will be trying to get their money out, specifically. During these times when they're like, oh shit, it's almost over. You can see these spikes. There was one when we were still funding them fully, and they were really making moves around Kherson and that kind of stuff. People were looking at, they were going to break through, and then the funding was cut off because their operatives in our government did everything they could to stymie it as long as possible, including backbenching McCarthy so that it would at least delay it even further. Same shit, right? That could have, that added 2 months to the whole process. Same situation in this area. So increasingly, I think they're gonna lose Crimea. I really, really do, and I think they're aware of it. And I think that's where the spike in crypto is coming from. People are using it to move their money out of Russia and China.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to take it. Look, that's complicated. I think there's a very good chance that ultimately they will take it back, but they will take it back when there is a collapse in Russia, because Putin doesn't have a replacement. He's built his system where he is the linchpin. He is the center of gravity. You remove him, there is nobody else to take his place.
There's no there.
And no Russian leader survives a war. Russia. As I've said, Russians will put up with mass casualties. They have a reputation that it's well deserved for putting up with loss and suffering and with high body counts. That's historically who they are. They don't like when their country is shown up to be an embarrassment. They didn't like it in the Japanese Russian war. They didn't like it in Afghanistan. And when all is said and done with this war, Vladimir Putin won't survive it because they're not going to like this. They're also, it's another. I've been in discussions with some friends of mine here in Ukraine, and with my friends who are Russians who have escaped and are living abroad, so they can speak a little bit more openly, because you never know who's listening. There's another aspect to this, is that Russians don't like to be cheated. They don't like when they're taxed.
That's our job.
They have actually very high taxes compared to their their income, and they resent the corruption now. And this plays into if the Tsar only knew stuff.
Yeah.
Because they resent the corruption, but they never go all the way to the top and blame Putin. It's always, oh, well, this is happening in spite of Putin, not because of the kleptocracy that Putin has built.
Right.
I am beginning to think that when things go really badly for the economy, and when the cost, the actual rubles and dollars and cents that this war has cost the Russian economy and the Russian people, that also is going to be a contributing factor to a lot of resentment and anger in Russia. So I do think that Crimea is possible, but actually taking the peninsula itself might be a result of a collapse in Russia. What I do think, however, militarily might hasten all of this is cutting off Crimea, because they're still so deluded because of the propaganda machine that exists in Russia, and the cult of personality around Putin, and the nationalism and the patriotism of a country at war. They really think that they are an unstoppable force, and that they're just going to roll all the way into Kiev eventually. When they realize that Crimea is on the table, and when they realize that they have lost Odessa forever, because Crimea is still a question mark. I've been to Odessa a lot during this war. Odessa's gone for them. They have lost Odessa forever. The people there hate the Russians with a passion. It kind of happens when you bomb the hell out of a place. When the Russian people realize that they have lost Odessa irrevocably, and when Crimea is on the table, what is this all for? They're gonna start asking, what is this all for? What are we doing here? We had Crimea more or less. Why did we push it? Why? I have my dacha, I have my summer home on, and also it's this dream of the third Rome, and Crimea is this integral part of controlling the Black Sea, so they have a maritime presence, because they believe that empire can only result from them having a strong navy. All of that comes just crumbling down the second there are Ukrainians, cutting off the land bridge and destroying the Kerch Bridge.
And filling the place with Europeans who are visiting and doing business with them and all that kind of stuff. Which brings us to one thing, this story right here, that the EU presidency wants a quick start to Ukraine and Moldova accession talks. That was one of the big pieces of news that came out. That they want, all the stuff that was talked about right before the Euromaidan that triggered Russia's kind of messing around in Ukraine and trying to stop it from joining Europe. They want to jumpstart that and make it happen quicker so that the Russians can't undermine it. They can't join NATO while there's a border dispute, but they can become a part of Russia and sort of fast track their relationship with Russia or with the EU and Ukraine during that time. The other thing is Moldova just signed this security pact with the EU, specifically about the Transnistria area and the area that the Russians were going to use as a staging zone for the western part of Ukraine, which is not going to happen, but that because they wouldn't be able to supply it, but it would be a way for them to squeeze it out with the help of Ukraine once this bullshit's over, because they would have support from EU and for that kind of security, and they'd have a friendly relationship with Ukraine on the other side of that district, that weird fucking gap, whatever it is, to drive them the fuck out of there, right? Which is huge. I mean, it's a big deal that they're finally getting around to doing that. And
I mean, both of these places, both Moldova and Ukraine, have a lot of work to do. An awful lot of work to do before they can properly ascend to joining the EU, notably with corruption. But it's good to see that people's that the plan is being worked out. So
right. I think the other big story is this thing, which was kind of, I gotta say, as things that I saw coming and didn't see coming or wasn't really paying much attention to, this was kind of shocking. Even this surprised me. So for those that don't know, Tucker Carlson apparently there's not enough money to be made on Twitter, so he has moved his show to Russia 24. His first episode was about U.S. biological weapons. And he's basically just doing fucking Jimmy Dore and Scott Ritter episodes for the Russian audience. Yeah. Look at that shit.
And I hope somebody somewhere is looking into the relationship, because he might be in breach of sanctions. Is he getting paid?
Technically,
24, I mean, that kind of stuff. That's not okay, man.
I'm fine if you want to do it, but here's a good idea. How about you give up your citizenship in that case? I don't mind. You want to trade it off? Pull a fucking Steven Seagal. Well, yeah, right. Yeah, just go ahead and hit the pull the bug out cord. Why shit or get off the pot, man. So
oh my God, look at that picture. It's great.
Yeah, I know. That was hilarious. So yeah, this is
and I'm not a huge fan of well, if you love it so much, then if you hate it so much, then why don't you leave? It's not again, not as simplistic as that. It's like, if you really believe that Russia is a better place, or are you just playing lip service?
Right.
And also, by the way, which Russia are you talking about? Are you talking about Moscow, or are you talking about Arkhangelsk, Murmansk,
right. All the places you don't go,
Tver, the shithole little provinces,
sure, which
might have some cosmetic niceties at the center of town because the local governor skims off a little bit and he realizes, maybe I better. But in a lot of places, not even that happens. It's don't go to Petersburg, don't go to Moscow, don't go to Sochi, go to Irkutsk. Go to Irkutsk. It's embarrassing. It's just absolutely embarrassing how obvious they're being led around by the nose, or they're the useful idiots or the fellow travelers or whatever it is. But to believe that Russia is some sort of paradise is just a level of ignorance that I can't fathom. And it's all and they do this all the time, the Russians, and they have a long-standing history of it. Bring somebody over, trot them around the nice places, take them to Moscow, take them to St. Petersburg, take them to Sochi. Everything is orchestrated. Everything is, this from your China visits. I'm sure they do the exact same thing.
Totally.
But Tucker Carlson has never been to Russia. He's been to Moscow.
Right. Exactly.
Two different, very different places.
Here's why I would like to share. I guess the story with Tucker. This guy right here. This is Sergei Prostasenya. He's a gas oligarch or whatever. He and his family were all found shot and killed in an apparent murder-suicide in Spain, in Catalonia, in the region down there where he has a little guest house. The story being, I suppose, that his I suppose he killed his wife and daughter before committing suicide. Wink, wink. She was 47. His daughter was 13. They were all dead of gunshot wounds. And this is who Tucker's getting in bed with. You know. And I gotta say, I don't necessarily buy that this was self-inflicted. I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm just gonna call it. I gotta say, especially
seeing as it was a string of several, I'm wondering if there was some sort of virus that some viral thing that the Russians were eating. Yeah, they were they sprayed the zombie self-immolation spray on everybody that made you go nuts and kill everybody you care about and then blow your own brains out. Yeah, that's that. Yep. That's exactly what they did, because it happened an awful lot among a certain strata of Russian oligarch.
Oh, his partner died.
Something in the water. Something in the vodka.
Yeah, but died of similar shit like a week before.
There's a whole string of them.
Yes, that was after there was.
You're right, and that's who Tucker is getting into bed with. Now, I mean, I hear all the, I've heard the kind of like, well, we do, it's the old. What was the interview that Trump did? Who was it with? Was it with Scarborough or was it with? I forget who said to him, Putin kills people, and he's like, well, we kill people too. It's like, no, actually, no, we don't. We don't do shit like that. I mean,
Trump
there are
wants
conspiracy theorists and
Trump thinks he can
stuff that goes on all over, but not.
And by the way,
this is a whole other kind of thing.
I would argue the one extrajudicial military strike that we did that was the most questionable action we've done since the fucking beginning of the Gulf War under Bush was Trump's killing of Soleimani. Was striking his fucking car with a drone strike when he was on his way to the airport. He wasn't engaged in military activity. We weren't hitting a planning site where he actually carries the shit out, right? He hit him in an allied country, right? That kind of stuff. That's the best example. And I would argue in a normal situation in the United States, a president wouldn't do that. And B, if he did, we would have a Iran-Contra hearing about it.
Damn straight we would. And the other thing is, Tucker's throwing himself. I don't know if you've seen the first episode of the podcast.
I have.
But that's who he is also throwing his lot in with. A country that does things like force you to accept a Russian passport. And if you don't, and you're a pregnant woman and you give birth, and you still refuse a Russian passport in the occupied territories of Ukraine, and you give birth, that child is taken from you. You give birth, you don't have a Russian, do not
Mars needs women.
Accept a Russian passport, they will take your child from you. It's the depth of their depravity is, I mean, it even shocked me when I was talking to Mykola Kaleba there in the first episode. Some of the stuff that like forcing a mother and her son to strip naked, and they took disgusting photographs of them and said, if you talk shit about Russia, we're going to put this out in social media. That's who Tucker Carlson is throwing himself in with. Right. That's the Scott Ritters of the world. That's the Tara Reads of the world. That's the people who excuse Moscow and instead point the finger at Ukraine. Ukraine does not have, I mean, you look at Russian soldiers that have been POWs and they get released into and returned in a prisoner exchange. Look at the two differences of the status of those soldiers. It's just, it's not both. Again, it's not both sides. It's a false equivalency. Russia is committing war crimes here on a regular basis. Ukraine is not. Full stop.
Well, and
Ukraine
again,
may have
it's one
suspended.
thing. The weird part is that they're proud of it. This is not a situation where we find ourselves where, the Ukrainians are saying that the Russians did this, and there's a back and forth about whether this, like, similar to what you might see with the IDF in Gaza and the back and forth, like who's telling the truth in this situation, right? There's no ambiguity about it. During Bucha and the initial part of the war, the Russians were, because they thought they were going to win, were posting videos of their sexual assaults and murders and castrations and tortures on their Telegram channel, cheering about it.
They themselves. They
did it. They posted it.
Not like they hide it. They don't hide it.
And this is,
and
anybody would compare it to, say, like Abu Ghraib, which is a national shame, and we had a myriad of hearings about. People went to jail about it. We had the president of the United States at that time had to fight like in court to try and justify what he was doing, so he wouldn't end up in jail, and just used every lever of the legal system to try and save himself from it. It's not even close. We're not even, this isn't even marginally close. I, for the record, was against that, as I'm sure you were, as were the people in the chat, and it was a shame.
What, Abu Ghraib?
It should have never happened. Yeah, and it should have never happened. In Russia, they would brag about that stuff. Part of what they were mocking us about, when Donald Trump says we're a laughing stock, that they're laughing at us. He said this during his presidency as well, that they laugh at us. Okay, one of the things that they laugh at us about is the fact that we get upset over that shit and try to stop it. Yep. That is one of the biggest mocking points in the Kremlin.
I ever tell you one of my Abu Ghraib stories about when Rather showed up at the Baghdad bureau right after the 60 Minutes and the
do tell.
Seymour Hersh thing hit when Abu Ghraib became public. Rather comes in for a trip to Iraq, and he gets what was called a battlefield circulation, where a general will take you around to several spots on the front lines, or wherever they're doing what they're doing, and you fly around, He was in a helicopter with General Sanchez, who was the commander of all U.S. forces in Iraq when Abu Ghraib broke. And he turned to Rather in a helicopter and said, because Rather was very concerned about the kind of reception he was going to get in Iraq from the military and after CBS aired the Abu Ghraib story. Sure. And Sanchez leans across to him in a helicopter and goes, regarding Abu Ghraib, he said, actually, we want to thank you for that, for bringing that to our attention. And we're gonna do something about it, and we are doing something about that. And that's the complete difference of, you're right, when they say when Trump says they're laughing at us, he means they're laughing at us because they think our system of the rule of law
is weak and
is weak, and is hypocritical because they don't believe in an actual court. I mean, look what's happening in New York right now. Whether you like it or not, or whatever your opinions are about the court case in New York, that is a process. That is a legal procedure in which there is a prosecution and a defense, and there is jurisprudence, and you go through a system of law. You are judged by your peers. In Russia, there's something like a 99, 98% conviction rate. Because once you're in the system, it's not a system. You're railroaded towards a prison. It's a completely different perspective on law. And so when they're quote unquote laughing at us, it's because they're like, why are you bothering with this thing you call law?
You should be torturing people.
You absolutely should be locking up whoever says something wrong about you, or use the court system as a weapon against your political opponents. Look what's happening to Shoigu and Shoigu's, former deputies in the defense ministry, now that he's been shoveled off, they're getting arrested and prosecuted for rinky-dink stuff. The message, like Timur Ivanov, Shoigu's deputy defense minister, he is facing prison time for an $11,000 alleged embezzlement. This dude was operating in billions of dollars. You going to tell me that they're catching him on 11,000? It's a tool. It is a weapon that is used in a political struggle from one authority with power against a rival. And you could maybe cynically say that about America, but I don't believe it in the least. Not compared to that kind of behavior. Yes, if you're wealthy, you can get a better lawyer than maybe a public defender. But at the same time, there is a system of law. You see it. It happens. It's transparent. Right. Even when Mayor Sean kicked everybody out of the. I'm going to go with the bubbles now. The hand signals.
That's
Even
right.
when Mayor Sean kicked everybody out of the courtroom, he still kept a transcript and purposely said in the transcript, this is going to be transparent. We will record this, but I cleared the room so I could come down on you, Castillo, because you're playing the fool. But that was still a legit, transparent system. You do not get that in places like Russia, and in particular Russia. So, all of these accusations that are being leveled against Ukraine this week about, the mobilization and, Zelensky's overstaying and martial law and all the rest of it, there is absolutely no comparison. And as a matter of fact, it's a huge part of why Ukrainians are fighting as hard as they are, is because they don't want to live like the Russians live. And I don't know why that's so difficult for some people to absorb that information, that perspective. It's I don't know. I don't get the simps who are rooting for Russia. It's just
maybe they just feel like, especially on the Republican side, that they will always be forgiven, that there is no bottom, right? So they can do whatever they want. And then at some point, if they want to come back and as long as they suck up to Trump, look at Mike Johnson, for example. Mike Johnson just passed the Ukraine funding, has sided with the Ukrainians in that they should be able to fire weapons into Russia if they're being attacked, right? Because he's trying to codify his bona fides as a national security hawk or something like that. At this point, he's like seeing a path forward for himself to vice president somewhere down the line, not for Trump, but for somebody else. That's clearly on his radar now. And he's probably already talking about who that person's going to be. And it ain't going to be somebody from the Freedom Caucus, so he doesn't give a shit. It might be John Kasich. It might be somebody else, somebody relatively right-wing moderate, but electable in some way. And then he'll join him and shore up his Christian qualifications, all that shit. He just sided with him. And, even he knows that, this is the right side of this issue to be on now.
Yes.
And he's lost. He's obviously lost Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and all this crowd, but not enough for them to kick him to the curb, because once the check cleared, they don't, they're like, we did our best. We held it up as long as we could, but we can't stop it. So, check, please.
Yeah. And while look, and when it comes to that bill, the $61 billion that was passed, there are some things that are coming online here. There are other things that are going to take longer to come online here. But what's happening, another reason why I am not particularly freaked out about what is happening in Kharkiv is that I am anticipating the momentum, the initiative to switch, because Ukraine is about to get a major boost in the arm. And Russia, by contrast, in a lot of ways, is kind of I don't want to underestimate the Russians, but they're kind of a spent force, and they don't have 50,000 soldiers are involved in that offensive outside of Kharkiv. That's not enough men. That's just not enough men to achieve anything that is going to fundamentally change the shape of this war. So we shall see. But I'm not pessimistic. I'm not giving into doom and gloom. I equally recognize that there's a lot of hard work and nothing is guaranteed. It's war. War is war. Is a fickle mistress, as I am wont to say. But if I were a betting man, I would be putting money on Ukraine, and I have since the beginning of the war, because I know the strength of the Ukrainian people, and I know why they're resisting, and I know that they will resist as long as they physically, as long as they absolutely can, because they know what it's like to live under Moscow's thumb. But aside from that, I also I think that with a whole bunch of weapon systems coming online and a lot more ammo, $60 billion, it goes a long way, actually. Not as far. I don't know if it'll get us to the finish line, but it's gonna make a change. That's for sure. It's 7 months without anything, and now they're gonna get a huge influx of support, and that is going to have an effect. It's going to have an effect. So I'm not freaking out. I'm frustrated with some things. I'm worried about some things. But big picture, we are still very much on the road to seeing Vladimir Putin's Russia humiliated here, and ultimately a fundamental change in Russia. And I think that's a good thing. So I'm okay with where we are despite everything.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think the Europeans, I don't know if they were, I guess, waiting for us to clear the chute before backfilling stuff. But once our funding cleared, there has been a steady influx of all kinds of stuff. The Latvians are giving $6 million for infrastructure. The Europeans are, again, creating this economic bridge for the Ukrainians. So not only can they get loans and the like from the European Union on a much quicker level, but they can also trade with Europe on a smoother route in that regard, and that will speed up some of the funds that go in there naturally, so that they're money that Ukraine can earn with the goods and services that it has, and mainly foodstuffs, that they will absolutely be able to
and I
more
just
their
saw
own
today.
way.
I just saw today that there's apparently there is at least a section of held oligarch funds that the Europeans are going to send to Ukraine in July. The Europeans, I don't know the specifics of it, but somebody that I know and I trust has made the public statement that there's been an agreement and that the Europeans are going to start giving seized Russian assets to Ukraine, that's going to be a big deal as well. This is not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination, and it's while Russia has had its way in a lot of ways over the last better part of the last year, I suppose.
I'd say the last 6 months have been the hardest part of it all.
I'd say definitely the last 6. Yeah. I mean, they kind of. Anyhow, yeah. I mean, they've been on the offensive. They've had the initiative for quite some time now. I really do believe that is about to switch, and we will see how it goes. But nobody's panicking here. There's frustration, there's anger, directed, by the way, at us as well. Albeit with the understanding of and appreciation for what has been done previously, but there's a lot of animosity right now because of the whole can't shoot into Russia thing, and you promised us weapons, and why is it taking you so long to come online? And you're not going to. There's no one single panacea for all the problems that are being faced here, but nobody's panicking. Nobody is falling to despair. You do not see people in the streets of Ukraine, be it here in Kiev or even in Kharkiv, where they're like, oh, woe is us and we're screwed. There's none of that attitude. There is still determination to repel Moscow, and that's not going to go away. So, insurgencies and the will of a people to resist an invader, it's a pretty powerful thing. So don't count. Nobody should be counting out the Ukrainians. Absolutely.
Agreed. And on that note, I'm going to be on Bob Seska's podcast, and we're doing it at noon. So I'm going to bug out on time today as best I can. And we will see you on Saturday when, unfortunately, you and I will be talking about an obviously shocking milestone. I think the big story is not will it happen by then, because it absolutely will. The question will be, will the American media pick up on that milestone and discuss it? Because I think that's a worm turning moment in the conversation. I agree. The 500K
as I've expressed before, I am deeply disappointed in the International Press Corps. So that's why I started the podcast. Those of you who haven't seen the podcast yet, the first episode is out. It is not an easy watch. There's topics that are very difficult to discuss, namely the abuse and abduction of children. It's not pleasant, but it should be out in the open, because that's what Ukraine is fighting against. If all goes according to plan, we'll have the second episode up on Sunday. But again, things are always variable. But we'll have a hope. If everything goes according to plan, we'll have episode 2 up on Sunday.
Yeah, great. Excellent. Thank you so much, brother. We'll see you again real soon. Take care of yourself.
All right,
Stay
buddy.
safe. Tell Luke I said hi. All right. Cheers. Off he goes. There he goes, ladies and gentlemen. Philip Hittner and the Major, and I managed to get on the air this morning. It was good. I'm gonna, like I said, I gotta hop off because I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do Bob Seska's show in a little bit, so I got to get set up for that. And I will see you guys this afternoon for the regular show after I do this podcast, and then go get acupuncture, and then come back, and then. Hit that like, everybody. Let them know you're here. All right.